Hi golfers, Rob Cheney here from GOLFTEC Singapore. Today's video we're going to discuss the grip. How to hold the club is one of the most important things you can learn to do to play good golf. Today we're going to discuss some of the options you have, some of the options you don't have, and some of the misunderstandings that surround the grip and grip pressure.
Swing. That was a good.
How we hold the club is critically important. I think one of the things when Stack and Tilt discusses the fundamentals and mentions that the grip is not a fundamental, it's a variable, that often gets misconstrued as saying we don't think the grip is important, and nothing could be further from the truth. Grips are variable. There's different versions of grips that you'll see throughout good golfers. If you only have to look at the PGA Tour and stand on the driving range to just notice the different grip choices and the placements of the hands. But like anything, if you study that closely enough, you'll also find some commonalities. The Golfing Machine book discussed some different options as far as grip, pressure and pressure points are concerned, and I'm going to discuss those today to help you put your hands on the club in a way that's going to really help you play better golf. As we go through today's video, I'm going to discuss some pressure points of the hands. Pressure point number one, the thumb pad of the trail hand. So the pressure point number one is associated with the first power accumulator. That's on the pad of the right thumb, or the trail hand thumb. Pressure point number two is the heel pad of the lead hand, and that's associated with the second accumulator, which is the hinging and unhinging of the lead arm. So that pressure point there at the heel pad is associated with that ability to cock the wrists up and down. And then pressure point number three, right on my index finger here on the second knuckle, is, in my opinion, probably the most important pressure point on the grip. Placing that pressure point to the side of the shaft helps you to learn club face control and apply lag pressure to the shaft throughout the time and space of the swing. Okay, let's go through some detail of the hand positions, starting with the top hand, which is my left hand for a right-handed golfer. And we're going to use the pressure point, or the pressure point number two, the heel pad there that I've drawn on my glove, as a starting point for how to position the top hand correctly. So that heel pad is going to sit very much on the top of the grip, and in doing so I'm then going to be able to use my fingers and grip through the middle part of the knuckle joint. So the number two pressure point there is going on the top of the grip, and then I'm going to close my fingers around the grip like so. A good test that you've got the left hand in the right kind of position would be to just hold it simply with your index finger and the heel pad. So the heel pad and the index finger there are supporting the weight of the club. And if you didn't have your heel pad sufficiently on top, for example, if you had your hand turned too far to the left and you tried to do that exercise, the club would simply fall out. So there's a good checkpoint there for you for the left hand. Heel pad on top, index finger wrapped round, supporting the weight of the club, and then just close your other fingers onto the shaft. A couple of other good checkpoints for the lead hand would be, if the heel pad's in the right place, the top of your wrist joint, which I've marked here once again with a little red dot, is the little gap or the little snuff box in the top of your wrist there. If you raise your thumb away from the shaft, you should get this little crevice in the top of your wrist. Having that sitting more or less on top of the grip is a good checkpoint, as is the ability to see 2 to 3 knuckles on your left hand, and the V that I've created here between my thumb and forefinger running very much up towards my right shoulder. And the final thing here on the left hand is to notice how the thumb doesn't sit directly down the front or the center of the shaft. It's going to sit slightly to the right hand side as I look down at my grip. So I have the left hand positioned correctly. As I look down from this position, I can see 2 knuckles. I can clearly see the logo here on the back of my glove, and I've got my thumb just to the side of the shaft. Now we're going to bring in the right hand couple of pressure points here for you to consider. So here I've drawn on my hand the number 1, which is on the thumb pad of my right hand, and also the number 3, which is on the trigger finger or the second knuckle of this index finger, which is an extremely important part of the grip, which we'll get into in just a second. So as we introduce the trail hand to the club, I'm going to bring it in from the side. The very first thing I'm going to try and make sure I do is to get that number 1 pressure point, so the thumb pad of my right hand, the lifeline if you like, to sit on top of the left thumb. So there's a very snug, very kind of natural, let me just stand a bit further back, there's a very natural position for that to just slide into. So there's no gaps in there, that's very snug. And then at the same time as I've done that, I'm going to use this number 3 pressure point, which is this knuckle right here, and I'm going to make sure I put it against the back of the shaft, like so. And that's really important because that allows you to sustain some lag and some pressure on the shaft throughout the entirety of the swing. In fact, it's very much part of how you control the club face. If you see, if I put my knuckle and my finger right down here on the base of the shaft, there's a relationship here between how that right knuckle, that index finger of that right hand, controls and has a sense of how the club face moves throughout the swing. So sliding that all the way up the shaft, putting these hands together, closing my right hand on, so the number 1 pressure point or the pad of my hand is covering my thumb, and the index finger here, the number 3 pressure point, has the pressure right on the back side of the shaft. So as you take a look at the grip now from the face on, you'll see as you look at my hands, the right hand has the thumb sitting just across the shaft. The index finger, as I've already said, is almost like a trigger, and it's sitting, the pressure is sitting very much or pushing very much on the side of the shaft. This helps me to maintain some lag pressure throughout the swing. That helps to put some stress on the shaft, helps with ball striking and compression. One other thing to note when the right hand is in its correct position or neutral position is that the V that I created between the thumb and the forefinger once again moves up or points up towards my right shoulder. So that's a common theme for both hands when they're in this neutral condition, that the V of the thumb and forefinger on both hands runs up this right arm and points towards this right shoulder. One other thing I'd like you to note is how closely positioned together the hands are. There's very little space, there's very little room in between the fingers and the shaft. It's very tight, it's very snug. There's not many gaps. One of the common mistakes I see with the grip is people have their hands spaced out. They have all this space in between their fingers, their palm and the club, making it very, very difficult to control how they move the club. So one of the things I'd like you to take from this video is how the hands, not only the positioning of them is important, but the fact that they're very close together. There's very little space in there. And whilst we're stood here like this, I think it's a good time to discuss how you join your hands together. There's 3 conventional schools of thought on this. One would be to have the hands separate. This is referred to as the baseball grip. That's the 10-finger grip, they sometimes call this. More like an 8-finger grip if you ask me. But the hands not specifically being joined together, just being separate. I would say if you decide to go for this grip, and there's nothing wrong with this grip at all, I would just keep encouraging you to make sure you keep your hands close together. One of the things with the baseball grip is these hands can tend to get a bit too spaced out. So I wouldn't go down that road, but if you like the baseball grip, that's fine. Just keep your hands nice and close together. One of the more popular grips referred to as the Varden grip, where the little finger here just sits on top of the index finger of the right hand. This just allows the hands to be that bit closer together. And finally, the interlocking grip, where you allow the index finger of the left hand and the little finger of the right hand to lock together and link, so you get your hands closer. I don't really have a huge preference as to which way you join your fingers or your hands. I think it's more important that the hands are positioned in a way that I've described so far, and the preference for which you join them together is very much that. It's a preference of yours, and hopefully part of the grip that you can find that's somewhat more comfortable. So now we've got our hands on the club, the next big topic that always comes up is how hard should I grip the club? And I think this is huge. For years there's been this idea that you're supposed to grip the club light or loose. The analogies that you often hear are things like, imagine you're holding a tube of toothpaste and the cap's off the tube of toothpaste and you don't want to squeeze any toothpaste out. Another one would be holding the baby bird. I'm sure many of you will have heard that one, where you're supposed to hold this baby bird in your hands and you've literally got its life in your hands and you're not allowed to squeeze it to death. I think both of those are actually incorrect. I think the real grip pressure in the fingers is much stronger than that. I'd go as far as to say somewhere around a 7 or 8 out of 10 in terms of how much pressure I have through my fingers. But I think what's different and what I'd like to clarify in the video is that whilst my fingers are very firmly on the grip and I have a firm grip pressure, I have wrists that are still very loose. So if you tried to pull this club out of my hands right now, there's no way you'd be able to get it out. Okay, I'm holding it firm enough that there is absolutely no way you'd be able to pull that out of my hands. But at the same time, I'm able to move my wrists freely and create speed and the necessary wrist angles and releases that happen throughout the swing. But at no time am I gripping this, what I would describe anyway, as lightly. And I think a lot of golfers fall foul of that misconception or those ideas that you're supposed to grip this thing super loose. In fact, it's one of the reasons I think a lot of golfers struggle with structure, arm structure and wrist loading in their swing as a whole, is a misunderstanding of grip pressure versus wrist pressure. Okay, so if you're not sure about grip pressure and you're not kind of clear on that one, go and grab a club, take your grip in your fingers, hold it about a 7, 8, even a 9 in terms of pressure, but make sure that you're able to still move your wrists and the club freely while holding the club firmly. A couple of final thoughts on grip. I think it's okay to have different grips throughout your bag. Remember, if you think about grip as being club face control and how you're moving this club face throughout the time and space of the swing, you're going to need different face angles and different alignments for different clubs. So there's nothing wrong with having a slightly modified grip for your driver if you feel you need it. You might hit the ball great with your irons, but you're slicing your driver. Then why not just modify your grip slightly? Try and move out of the box of thinking that everything has to be the same for all the clubs. I've talked in previous videos about changing the grip for the short game and for chipping. I have a very, very different grip to the one that I just described for my chipping and pitching, where I turn both my hands much more to the left. And I think having that flexibility and understanding that not all grips have to be the same can really open up different avenues for your game that maybe you didn't realize existed before. Guys, as always, thanks for watching. Do comment down below if you found the video useful. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on grip, things and tips or lessons that you've had over the years that have worked for you. One of the best drills that you can use for this right hand and getting this number 3 pressure point in the right place is the one arm only exercise that I described a few weeks back in one of the drills where we talked about how this right arm works. So much of the right arm and how it works throughout the swing is connected to how you hold the club, connected to that grip. So if you're using that right arm only drill, do let me know. Make sure your right hand's in that position that I described. I think you'll find it much easier to start to create the alignments and, as I say, put the pressure and lag the shaft slightly as you come into impact. Another great advantage of having the right hand on the club in the correct fashion is that you can use that number 1 pressure point, which is on the thumb pad of the right hand, to push your right arm away from you during the backswing. I talked about this in the video and how to keep your left arm straight, and it's a real eye-opener for people where they understand that the right arm is really responsible for keeping the left arm straight, and having the number 1 pressure point in the right place, which is pushing the right arm and giving you that extensor action, as the golfing machine describes it, that pushing away feeling, keeps the structure in those arms going back. So there's another really key reason to get this right hand on the club in the right place. So while there are tons of different looking grips out there, there are a lot of common themes between golfers who do this well. Ultimately, I'm not going to tell you to change your grip if you're able to control the club face and are hitting the sort of shots that you want to. Your grip's either already okay, or you've certainly managed to find a way of matching up the pieces, which is all it's really about. But I would say that giving the grip your attention and striving to make it as good as you possibly can is a really good way to start golf. And if you're in the middle of some changes or if you're trying to move to the next level, take a look at your grip, ask your instructor if it's something you feel you need to change, because sometimes taking that grip change can give you the next level of golf that maybe you're looking for. If you enjoyed today's video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, please do consider clicking that subscribe button and joining the community. I look forward to making another video for you in the not too distant future. Until then, I hope you're able to get outside and enjoy some golf. Stay safe, and I'll see you again very soon.